So would you say you call Oklahoma home?
I absolutely would call it home.
Where do you live now?
I live in Owasso, Oklahoma currently.
And do you have family here in the state of Oklahoma?
I do. So my wife and I have been married for 19 years. I have 3 children, age 15, 11, and 8. And I have a brother that lives in Oklahoma City. He owns a business. He's a physical therapist in Oklahoma City. And much of my wife's family and much of my extended family lives in Oklahoma.
So do your parents live in Oklahoma as well?
They do. So my parents reside in Oklahoma. They're former educators of over 30 years in the Oklahoma public school system, and they reside near Henrietta, Oklahoma.
And I understand your wife is also a teacher?
That's correct. So my wife currently teaches at Stone Canyon Elementary in Owasso.
What age kids does she teach?
First grade, sir.
Are you involved in any organizations in your community up there?
I am. So my children are very involved in sports, athletics. My son's involved in competitive baseball. My daughters are involved in softball, competitive cheer, piano, tumbling, constantly juggling their activities and trying to get them back and forth. Outside of that, we're involved in Life Church, which is based out of Oklahoma City, but we attend the Owasso campus, and we're involved in many other organizations, such as Project Hope. It's a non-for-profit based out of Owasso, Oklahoma, as well as United Way.
Tell me a little bit about what you do with Project Hope.
It's just an organization that really my wife is more involved, I would say, than I am. We contribute to that organization on a monthly basis just as part of our giving to the overall community, and we're proud of our contribution.
And what is Folds of Honor?
So Folds of Honor is an organization based out of Owasso, Oklahoma. Folds of Honor is an organization that provides scholarships for those who have fallen in the line of duty. Scholarships for the children of those who have fallen in the line of duty.
Now, turning to your professional career, you indicated that you're currently a senior district manager for Janssen, right?
That's correct, sir.
Do you work in a particular division, particular part of the company?
I do. So I currently reside in the CVM franchise, that's cardiovascular and metabolics.
And what does that mean, cardiovascular and metabolics?
So our primary responsibility is for cardiovascular products across the geography that I cover, and we cover a host of cardiovascular specialists such as interventional cardiology, general cardiology, electrophysiology, as well as some institutions in the state of Oklahoma.
That sounds like a lot.
It is, sir. It is, but it's challenging, but we enjoy it.
How long have you worked at Janssen?
I've been at Janssen since May of 2002.
So that sounds like right after you finished at OU.
That's correct, sir. So it was my first, as I stated, I had some jobs that I worked at during college, but it was my first professional job upon graduating from the University of Oklahoma.
How did you make the decision to take a job with Janssen coming out of college?
Sure. So at that time, a lot of my background was in sciences, as I explained. It was in education. In working in healthcare at Oklahoma Cardiovascular Associates for several years, I really enjoyed the opportunity to stay connected to the sciences, as well as have the opportunity to have patient interaction and feel like I could impact patients' lives in the pharmaceutical industry.
So is it typical for somebody to come right out of college and take a job with Janssen?
It is not, sir.
How did you get that position?
Yeah, so at Janssen, at that time it was Ortho McNeil. We have a program that's called a college overhire program, and it's a program where we go out and we seek talented candidates across the country who have recently graduated from college. This program, I would say, comprises less than 5% of all new hires at Janssen Pharmaceuticals.
And how does the company choose amongst the candidates for that college overhire position?
Sure, it's a very rigorous process. So, every candidate has to compete as you would with any other job.
And what were you doing when you first started at Janssen?
So when I first started in Janssen in May of 2002, I was a sales representative in the Tulsa, Oklahoma market.
And what made you choose to pursue that career as opposed to other options that may have been available to you coming out of OU?
So I believe that I did have other options at that point. I think the things that were appealing was the credo of Johnson & Johnson. At that time I mentioned I worked for Ortho McNeil, a J&J subsidiary. But the credo of J&J is something to be valued and respected. It's withstood the test of time over decades, and as a guiding principle, it's to be admired.
And that made a difference to you at the time?
It absolutely did.
So tell me a little bit more about when you started at Janssen. You said it was May of 2002 as you were finishing from OU and you were coming in as a sales representative. What do you have to do to get started?
Sure. So we have, at Janssen, we have a very extensive and thorough, robust training curriculum. So when I first started, I was given a very extensive outlay of the courses in which I was to complete. So our coursework typically is three-phase. So it's home study, which is done in one's home office. It is a portion of it. The second phase, if you will, is home office, which is actually in Raritan or Titusville in New Jersey. And the third portion would be field-based application.
Explain that, field-based application.
That would be the portion where you've completed all the core-based curriculum and you're entering the phase in which you would go out and have interactions with healthcare providers.
I want to come back to the training and talk about that in a little bit more detail later. But as a starting point, maybe you could tell me what products you were working with when you first started as a sales representative?
Sure. So the products I had when I started in 2002 was Levaquin, an injectable and oral antibiotic, Ditropan XL, an oral agent for overactive bladder, and Ultraset, at that time, a non-scheduled analgesic.
So, Mr. Flanner, can you spell those first two for us?
Yes, sir. I'll do my best. Levaquin, Levaquin, and Ditropan XL, Ditropan space XL.
Thank you.
You bet.
And is that a capital XL?
Yes, sir. Capital XL. I apologize.
And you said that was for?
An oral agent for overactive bladder.
All right. And Levaquin is an antibiotic?
That's correct, sir.
And what is that used for?
It's used for a host of indications such as community-acquired pneumonia, complicated skin structure infections. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's actually something important. I know you have a tendency to speak a little quickly, but if you can try to speak slowly, it'll help out getting an accurate record of the testimony.
Yes, sir. Ma'am, I apologize. It's for community-acquired pneumonia, complicated skin structure infections, and there's a host of other indications, but those would be some of the main ones.
And you mentioned Ultraset as well. We've heard a bit about Ultraset in the course of the trial, but if you could explain for the court exactly what Ultraset is.
Right. So at that time, Ultraset was a combination of tramadol plus acetaminophen. So it was 37.5 milligrams of tramadol combined with acetaminophen in one tablet for the management of acute pain.
In your experience, is it common for a sales representative to be responsible for multiple products at the same time?
It is, sir. As I look across Janssen Therapeutics, not only just a pain division or a cardiovascular metabolic division, but as I look across divisions such as immunology, oncology, and our neuroscience division, you will see in many cases those sales forces have anywhere between 1 to 3 drugs or 1 to 3 products in their portfolio.
So how does that work? A sales representative has 3 different products. They may not be in the same therapeutic area. Does one get priority? I mean, how does a sales representative decide what to promote, what to do on a given day?
So typically, there would be assignment from the home office on priority ranking. So there would be a priority product that's heavier weighted. So for instance, If there's 2 products in the bag, one product may have a 60% weighting, a second product could have a 40% weighting.
And what does that mean, weighting?
Weighting just helps determine priority for that product from the organization.
Okay, and what does that mean? Does weighting mean anything in particular to a sales representative who may be promoting the product?
It is not, sir. It may determine things such as a number of calls per day, but in terms of interactions with healthcare providers, it would not change. Our goal at that point, whether the interaction is with the product that has a 60% weighting or a 40% weighting, is to ensure that on every sales interaction, on every customer interaction, that we are balancing the efficacy and the risk in according or in compliance with our FDA approved package insert.
So would a sales representative talk about multiple products on the same sales call?
Potentially, sir. It's, at times it can be difficult. Physicians are busy in their daily practice and juggling a lot of priorities themselves. Should we have time, we could possibly get to 3 products. Of course, there may be instances where we're only able to get to 1 product.
When you were working as a sales representative, how long would you say a typical sales call was with a doctor?
On average, every call is different, but if I had to average it, I would say around 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is it hard to talk about multiple products in 3 minutes?
Yes, sir, it is.
How long did you work as a sales representative?
So I worked as a sales representative from Janssen from 2002 to 2005.
And was your role the same during that time period?
From 2002 to 2005, my role was the same. Yes, sir.
Same 3 products?
Yes, sir.
And what happened in 2005?
So in 2005, there was a institutional position, which is a hospital representative. That position came open for the South Oklahoma City area. I competed and interviewed for that position with many other candidates and was fortunate enough to be in that position in 2005.
And were you living in Oklahoma at that time?
I was living in Oklahoma, but at that time I actually moved from the Tulsa area to Blanchard, Oklahoma.
Okay. Now, you said an institutional specialist, so you were calling on institutions?
That's correct.
If you could explain that for the court, that'd be great.
Sure. So some of our customer base at that time would have been healthcare clinicians such as hospitalists, emergency room physicians, pharmacists, surgeons, those who reside in the hospital setting. The accounts, just some examples of accounts that I had responsibility for at that time would have been Norman Regional, right here in Norman, Ardmore, Integra Southwest, St. Anthony's, Ada. Those are a few examples.
And so at this time, the institutional specialist position, how long did you have that position?
I was in that position from 2005 to 2008.
And during that time, did you promote any opioid medications?
From 2005 to 2008, I did, sir.
Which ones?
To the best of my recollection, I had Duragesic for a short period of time.
Okay, would that have been earlier in that time period rather than later?
Roughly 2006.
Okay. Now, the court has heard a little bit of testimony about a wind-down period in Duragesic promotion after the drug went off patent in 2005. Is that the period you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Now, you said you had that position until 2008, you said?
Yes.
And what happened in 2008?
So in 2008, I had completed our Janssen Management Development Program, and with interest in being a manager at Janssen, and had an opportunity to interview and compete for a position for a district manager, which covered, at that time, it was North Texas, East Texas, Shreveport, Louisiana, and again, the entire state of Oklahoma.
So is that you mentioned that you lived in the Dallas area for 5 years. Was that during that time?
That's correct, sir. So I moved from Blanchard to Prosper, Texas, just north of Frisco.
And that was in 2008?
2008.
Why did you want to be a district manager?
Well, as my tenure progressed throughout the company, I enjoyed the opportunity to lead people Hadn't really been in an opportunity. Most of my opportunities have been to lead without authority, but felt like, I demonstrated leadership skills that were valuable to the organization and wanted to lead a team of individuals to really impact healthcare across the region.
So tell us what's involved in being a district manager.
Sure. So as a district manager at that time, as I recall, I think I had 10 representatives originally that I was responsible for.
And I'll remind you not to speak too quickly if you
Yes, sir.
I know it's not natural, but just want to give you that reminder.
Yes, sir. So at that time, as I stated, I had several states. I had 10 representatives, as I recall, across those states. So my responsibilities would have been spending roughly 4 days in the field every week, having interactions with healthcare providers, ensuring that our specialists were having educational discussions that were in accordance with our FDA-approved package insert, making sure that we were effectively communicating the benefits and the risk of Janssen products in a manner consistent with our PI. In addition to that, of course, as a manager and a leader of people, it has a lot of responsibility from an administrative perspective. So I completed performance reviews, approved expense reports, a whole host of other things.
Now, when you're in that role, I imagine you report up to someone else?
Yes, sir. I report to a region business director.
Okay, so it's regional business director, district manager, and then the sales representatives, including institutional specialists?
That's correct.
Mr. Brody, sorry to interrupt you again. You said something about a PI. Is that an acronym?
Package insert, sir. So just the FDA-approved
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
package labeling.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So you said you spent 4 days a week in the field. What was involved in being out in the field?
So in the field is having customer interactions, having interactions with healthcare providers, their staff, nurses, mid-levels, pharmacists. So just ensuring that we're answering questions that clinicians have regarding our Janssen products, and making sure that we appropriately present our products in a manner consistent with our package insert.
Are you with sales representatives when you're out in the field as a district manager?
Yes, sir.
And why do you do that? Why do you accompany them?
Well, one, it's important, I think, from my perspective, to have direct interaction with healthcare providers to make sure that we're addressing concerns in the market, emerging trends, things like that. But it's also important, I'm there to make sure that our representatives are compliant in their messaging with their physicians.
Now, compliant in their messaging. Explain what that means.
So compliant in their messaging would be simply to ensure that the messaging that we're conveying to physicians is a fair balance of the efficacy and safety that a product could potentially deliver for appropriate patients, balanced with the side effect, safety, and risk profile that a product carries.
Now, did any of your sales representatives during this time period, and you said you were in Dallas for 5 years, is that right?
That's correct.
During that time period, did any of the representatives that you supervised promote an opioid medication?
Yes, sir, they did.
Which one?
Nucynta.
Okay, what time period was that?
That would be roughly 2010. Nucynta IR, immediate release.
All right. Not the extended release?
Not that I recall, sir.
And you said you had approximately 10 representatives that you oversaw?
Yes.
Did something change in 2013 when I'm just adding up 2008, 5 years in Dallas, 2013. What changed then?
So in 2013, had an opportunity, again covering, I was already covering the entire state of Oklahoma, had an opportunity to move back home. Obviously my children are getting older, my parents are healthy, my wife's mom is healthy. I've got a large amount of family in the state of Oklahoma, so just an opportunity to get back closer to home and let my parents and relatives, enjoy seeing my kids grow up and be active in the community.
So there wasn't actually a change in your position, just a change in your location?
Yes, sir. It was a voluntary choice of mine.
Tell me about the team that you've been overseeing in your role as a district manager. What kind of experience do they have?
Right. So I can currently speak to the representatives that I have. Currently, I cover Oklahoma and West Texas. I have 7 specialists total. I have 5 in the state of Oklahoma, 2 that reside in West Texas in Amarillo and Lubbock. And what I would say about my individuals is they're very dedicated to their work on a daily basis. They go out with one goal in mind of helping improve healthcare across the state of Oklahoma and across the state of West Texas. They're very talented in what they do. I think at Janssen, we tend to seek and attract and hire very talented people, and I'm very proud of the work that they do on a daily basis.
Have the representatives, how much experience do those representatives on your team have?
In general, my team has about 15 years of experience.
That's total or on average?
On average. So each individual would have about 15 years of experience.
And you said that 5 of the representatives that you oversee live in Oklahoma?
That's correct.
All over the state, or are they centrally located in the Norman, Oklahoma City area?
So I have 2 that reside in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I have 3 that reside in the Edmond, Oklahoma City Metroplex.
All right. Have the representatives on your team worked in different therapeutic areas?
Yes, sir, they have.
Is that common at Janssen?
It is common. One of the things that makes Johnson & Johnson unique is the various therapeutic areas in which Janssen operates in. So it's not exclusively a pain company. Likewise, it's not exclusively a cardiology company. Janssen operates in oncology, immunology, infectious diseases, neuroscience, CNS. So yes, sir, they tend to have cross-functional experience across multiple therapeutic areas.
Sounds like that would require significant training. Is that something that has to be invested in order to have people work across multiple therapeutic areas?
Absolutely.
And why does Janssen invest in that?
Janssen invests in training because we want our reps to be credible each and every time we step foot in front of a healthcare practitioner. Your Honor, our representatives work on a daily basis with the doctors that they go to church with, that they see at the grocery store, that they see at the ball fields. And it's very important that our Janssen specialists are able to maintain their credibility in front of their customers. And the way that we do that is being as knowledgeable as we can in the therapeutic areas that we work. The last thing that we want to do is go out and disseminate or have a conversation that could potentially be deceiving to a physician, as that could potentially harm the next patient that walks in. It could potentially harm your cousin or one of your best friends that's seeking care from that same doctor.
Now let's talk about that training. I told you I wanted to go through that in a little more detail. You indicated that you went through a training program as a new sales representative, and in your experience, both as a sales representative going through it yourself and as a manager, what is the training like for new sales representatives?
So it's very robust. I started off by stating the home office or home study, which is done at one's individual residence. It is very robust. So it's a training that's composed of a compilation of modules that include product-specific information as well as disease state information, and a very extensive analysis or modules on our healthcare compliance interactions and the guidelines and policies and rules that we should have with healthcare professionals.
So you said, you mentioned 2 things there that I want to ask you about: product state information and disease state information. What is product state information?
I may have misspoke. Product specific information, so that would be information directly related to the product, such as the FDA Phase 3 clinical studies, which is studies that the drug sought approval from the FDA with. So that would be an example of product specific information. As well as obviously indications, contraindications, risk, adverse events, etc. Disease state information would be more around the disease state. So for instance, it could be cardiothoracic disease.
Okay. And you also mentioned healthcare compliance. What is that?
So healthcare compliance is a set of non-negotiable guidelines, policies, and procedures that Janssen reps are to follow in their interactions with healthcare professionals.
How long does actually, before I ask you this, we have an exhibit that was previously admitted into evidence, J1492, that just might be helpful as a reference point. May I approach you on it?
Yes, you may.
And Your Honor, this is already in evidence.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a second, Mr. Brody.
Sure.
Two. Just make a couple minutes break. You want to
Yeah.
stand up and stretch or whatever.
Sure.
Amy, I'm having to get off, so you guys. Okay. Thank you.
set?
Yes.
So, Mr. Flannery, you have in front of you a document that has an exhibit sticker on the bottom, J1492. Is this an example of summary of a home study for a sales representative?
It is.
Now you mentioned product risks, product-specific information. Would that include the package insert?
Yes, sir.
And again, that's the FDA-approved label.
Yes.
You mentioned the clinical trial information from phase 3 clinical trials. Anything else in terms of product-specific information that would be covered in a typical sales training program?
As you can see, as we progress through the document, there are additional information just around hospital and institutional departments, roles of clinicians inside the institution, just so that individuals can better understand the interactions inside the hospital setting.
And so the sales representatives, when they're in training, they're doing this at home?
That's correct.
Are there any progress checks on them during the course of that time?
Absolutely. So the way that our home study is rolled out for individuals is, you can see it's on a weekly basis with every single week, basically every hour accounted for from a module perspective. Each module requires a 90% proficiency assessment in order to pass. And an individual is allowed up to 2 times to take the module. If they don't pass the module within 2 passes or 2 attempts at 90% either time, it's advanced to our region business director and our sales training department, our leadership, to make a decision at their discretion.
How often, you mentioned these modules have tests. Is that the only check-in that's done?
It's not, sir. So at the end of every week, our sales representatives and our new hires are assigned a region trainer and a district field trainer. So the district field trainer would be someone who is currently doing the job, is in role in the current district. And at the end of every week, we do what's called a weekly progress check. And that weekly progress check is an opportunity for the new hire to have a discussion with the field trainer as well as the district manager to ensure that the core competencies and skill sets and knowledge that we've asked that they retain for that week, that it is retained and they can demonstrate it.
What's a field trainer?
So, sir, I think I explained a field trainer would be someone who is embedded, who is currently doing the job in the district, who's doing the job of sales representative.
Okay. Anything else involved in that home study portion outside of the broad categories that we've talked about?
So there would be, some additional informal training that would go on during that. So just frequent check-ins with the district manager to ensure that, again, that the individual is continuing to progress. So it is a process that it's not as if we turn this calendar over to the new hire and we check back in at the end of month 1. There's consistently progress checks throughout the process to ensure that sales representatives are understanding the data and the application of the data.
And how long does this home study typically take?
So typically home study, it really depends on the new hire date. For instance, we have training courses that we set out through the course of a year. So, for instance, if an individual was hired on June 1st, the next training date could perhaps be September in terms of home office training. So that the individual could have anywhere from a month to 3 months to do the training.
Yeah. And then you said the next step is home office training. What's involved in home office training?
So at home office training, at that point, an individual would have completed all of their core curriculum assignments or e-learning assignments, which we just spoke of. When they come into the home office, it's really about application. How do we take that information and properly convey our FDA-approved package insert label? How do we properly convey our FDA-approved phase 3 clinical studies in a fair, balanced way that's consistent with our package insert?
And how long does home office training, and you said that's in New Jersey?
Yes, sir, typically in Raritan or Titusville.
Okay, and is that where Janssen has offices?
That's correct.
How long does that take?
On average, 2 weeks.
Okay, and is that like an all-day, every-day kind of 2-week course?
Yes, sir, all day, every day.
And then what happens after a sales representative gets through that home office training? So the rep has done home study, passed the modules, done home office training. What happens next?
If I can add one additional point,
Yep.
from a home office perspective, one thing that it's not just product training. There's some very core components that go into that, such as healthcare compliance. So at our new hire training, we would have a healthcare compliance officer that would come into the room and spend dedicated time with our new hires. So they would come into the room and they would, even though at that point they've gone through modules that explain healthcare compliance, district managers and field trainers have had conversations regarding compliance, we would have a healthcare compliance and policy officer that would come into the training class and spend dedicated time with individuals, answering any questions that they have around our policies, our procedures, and our proper interactions with clinicians.
Okay, so that's the home office training. What happens next?
So after that, an individual would be ready for what I just described as phase 3, which would be field-based application. So at that point, an individual would have passed all of their assessments. They would have been certified by their district manager or their field advisor, which states that they can properly explain the FDA-approved package label in fair balance from an efficacy and a risk and side effect profile. At that point, we would place a field trainer or a region trainer with that individual, or that individual may go out to another territory of someone who's skilled in the current job and observe them basically in a shadowing opportunity, just to get a better sense of the interactions.
So they don't go out on their own right away?
They do not, sir.
And in that circumstance, if they're going out with a field trainer, what's the purpose of that? What is the field trainer doing?
If they go, so if a field trainer assists and goes out,
Yep.
a field trainer would be there just to answer, again, any unresolved questions around product information, anything in regards to the label, but also being a very active listener to what the representative is saying in front of the clinician or the healthcare provider to make sure that everything that is said in a compliant manner with our label.
Now, after that period, and assuming the sales representative moves on beyond that and is out on their own, are there continuing training requirements?
There absolutely is. So there's, we have informal training that we do at the district level. So for instance, every 2 weeks, my region business director has a call with our managers in regards to any updates that need to be communicated to the field. We always have a compliance discussion as part of that conversation. Subsequently, after that, I have calls every 2 weeks with my district team, again, to relay that same information and have that same compliance discussion. In addition, we have a training platform and an app on our iPads that's called ULearn. And ULearn is an app where we house a host of information and product-related information where, as a district manager, I can informally or formally assign a module to an individual, as well as on-demand learning. So if an individual at any point in time chooses to or elects to, they can go on and receive additional information on demand.
So I want to ask you a little bit about district manager training, the kind of training you have to undergo for your position. But before I do, we've heard sales representative promotion to doctors described as detailing. And that was something I wondered about for a long time before I finally asked somebody, why do they call it detailing?
Sure, I think the change, in my opinion, is somewhat interchangeable with education and healthcare provider interactions.
Okay, but why the word detailing? If you know.
I really don't know.
Okay.
I've obviously heard the term, but I don't know where it originated or who originated it.
Okay, for you, that's just the interaction with the healthcare provider?
It's the interaction and the education component. Yes, sir.
All right. So let's shift gears and let's talk about the kind of training that a district manager, somebody in your position, undergoes before taking on that position at Janssen. Can you describe that for the court, please?
Sure. So I think I mentioned as a district manager, I went through a process called Management Development Program. It's our MDP program. It's an extensive 4-phase program in which we learn a lot of different leadership skills, how to make Credo-like decisions on a daily basis. So again, just very thorough, exposes us to a lot of different fictional scenarios and scenarios in which we have the opportunity to demonstrate good judgment skills.
And you said 4-phase training program?
Yes, sir.
What are those phases?
Going to put me on the spot here, sir. It's operational foundations, business acumen. Our final phase is CDS and management development intern.
What does that stand for? CDS.
It's a competency development seminar.
Okay, and what's involved in that?
It's run by a third-party vendor where they come in and we go through a group of simulated exercises where the district manager goes through a series of coaching opportunities with representatives, and we demonstrate or we assess their ability to effectively coach an individual, demonstrate active listening skills, things like that.
As a district manager, are you involved in compliance?
Absolutely, sir. It's a very key and core component of what I do on a daily basis.
And how is compliance part of your job on a daily basis?
So as previously mentioned, I'm in the field 4 days a week with representatives. So I spend a lot of time in direct customer interactions. And so as a manager, one of the things that I'm responsible for is actively listening and making sure that our representatives, as I stated before, are making sure that there's a fair balance on every discussion between the risk of our products, the potential harm, consequences, in contrast with our efficacy benefits.
And if you see that that's not happening, and that fair balance that you talked about is not being conveyed, what do you do?
We would escalate that to our healthcare compliance department.
Okay, where is the healthcare compliance department?
It's in Titusville, New Jersey.
Now, you testified earlier that you promoted Duragesic as a sales representative around the 2005-06 time period. Did you receive training on Duragesic?
I did, sir.
And what was that training like?
It was extensive. In summary, I would say that it was no different than the training platform that's outlined in Exhibit 1492, and very similar to the training that I've received on other products.
Now, I understand that was 13 years ago, is it?
Roughly.
How many different products have you been involved with since that time?
Numerous, probably 7 to 10.
All right, can you tell us a little bit about those products?
Sure. So the products that I'm currently involved in the cardiovascular space is a product called Xarelto, Xarelto. Invokana, it's a diabetes medication. The products that I previously mentioned, Levaquin, try for me to spell it again. Okay. Ditropan XL, Ultraset, Duragesic, Remicade, Invega Sustenna, Invega Trenza.
And are those products across different therapeutic areas?
They're all across different therapeutic areas, yes, sir.
All right. You testified earlier that sales representatives in your district, when you were a district manager, for a period of time were promoting Nucynta. Did those reps have to undergo training specific to Nucynta, such as some of the modules that we see in J1492?
They absolutely did.
And is that sort of training consistent with what a sales representative will see across any product that is made and promoted by Janssen?
It's very consistent, and the reason I can speak to that again, the products that I named off across multiple therapeutic areas and disease states have all been very similar training platforms to what I've outlined.
And so would that include the sort of clinical trials, package insert type of information that you described?
Absolutely.
Now, I want to shift gears slightly and dive a little deeper into the role and the work of a sales representative. And the court has heard reference to something called a call plan. What is a call plan?
So a call plan is a list of physicians that is produced by our home office in a therapeutic area in which we would ask that our specialist call on with a certain frequency across a quarter or a semester.
Okay, so explain a semester.
A semester is just a 6-month period versus a quarter.
Okay, so a 3-month or a 6-month period. And then how does the representative use the call plan?
So the representative receives the call plan from our headquarters, and they use the call plan as a guide as to the physicians that they're being asked to call on and educate, and the frequency with which they're asked to call on and educate.
Okay, and then I guess that pretty much would guide them then for the whole quarter or semester?
That's correct, sir.
And then are there any additions, subtractions that might happen over the course of that time period?
There are. So our sales representatives, as well as in the instance of a vacancy, short-term disability, things like that, our managers could also modify a call plan. But reasons for modification in the call plan would be reasons such as a physician has moved. They no longer reside in the geography. The physician is unfortunately deceased, or they've recently retired. A reason for adding a physician to a call plan would be that they are one of the aligned specialties that's approved, and let's say they recently graduated fellowship from the University of Oklahoma and are moving to Tulsa. So in that instance, we would allow our Tulsa representative to add a board certified fellow that's now practicing.
How much, you said you have 5 representatives that you oversee in the state of Oklahoma right now, right?
That's correct, sir.
How much territory, how much of the state do they cover?
The entire state.
So we talked about detailing or promotion. Why do you go out and see doctors? Why do Janssen sales representatives go out and promote to doctors?
Absolutely, sir. We believe that we have good products, and we believe that our products have potential benefits for appropriate patients. And so we seek to go out every day and educate clinicians in a compliant manner, in fair balance with our FDA-approved package insert, and answer any questions that physicians have regarding Janssen products.
And is the ultimate goal of that to have doctors use Janssen's products for appropriate patients?
Sir, it is certainly one of our goals as a sales organization is to have clinicians use our products. And again, because we believe that our products do have benefit for patients in the market, appropriate patients in the market. And so as we educate on the risk and benefits, if a physician decides he or she, in consultation with their patient, that it's a good product for their patient, we hope that they use our product.
You want them to consider using the Janssen product as opposed to, another, say, a competitor's product.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the ways that a sales representative might provide information to a doctor. I assume that you don't just solely speak to the doctors.
That's correct, sir.
So what else might a sales representative do? What kind of information might a sales representative provide to a doctor?
Right, so a couple things that they may provide, resources that we have available. We have digital, what we call digital assets that are available on our iPad, which go through all of our copy review process internally. They're in alignment with our FDA-approved package insert. So there's a host of information in there that we could share with physicians. Again, all compliant material. In addition, our sales representatives may have clinical studies that are available to them, and those studies would be provided by our home office and by our training department. Additionally, if a doctor had a question about dosing and said, I need better understanding and clarification of the renal dosing or hepatic dosing of one of your products, we would have a dosing card. It's a very small card It has our FDA-approved package insert on the back, and we could give he or she a copy of our dosing card that would help guide some of their decisions in accordance with our FDA package insert.
Is it typical to provide the package insert when you're providing that kind of information to a doctor?
It is, sir. So it's on all of our materials currently. So all of our hard copy materials that we may transfer to a physician, as well as all of our samples. Not all products, Janssen samples in the market. Those that we do have a small package insert affixed to the back.
And we've seen in the course of this trial reference to things like, a pen that might have the name of a medication on it. Does the package insert come with that as well?
Sir, we no longer distribute those items.
Okay.
So items such as pens, notepads, we do not distribute.
In your experience, when Janssen was, and when you were a sales representative, when Janssen was still distributing those kinds of things, were they accompanied by the package insert?
They were.
Are there limits to what a sales representative can discuss with a doctor?
There absolutely are.
And can you describe generally, how a sales representative learns about and applies those limits?
Right. So the limits would again be in alignment with our FDA-approved package insert. So all of our data, as I explained earlier, our digital assets, our hard copy materials that we may use in interactions with clinicians, all undergo our PRC and regulatory review in-house. So that is non-negotiable and strictly regulated, that the sales representative is not to create any material on their own. Any material that is used in the field with a healthcare professional is to be distributed by our home office.
Does the same thing apply to a clinical study that a sales representative might use with a doctor?
It absolutely does. So as you know, there's a lot of studies that are available in the public domain. Just because it's in the public domain does not mean we use it. It has to be approved by our regulatory department and disseminated to the sales force accordingly.
What happens if a doctor asks a question about something that is outside of what a sales representative is permitted to discuss?
So if a doctor were to ask a question, as you're stating, like an off-label question, we have a compliant vehicle to help address their concern. It's called a medical information request or process. It's an online application that we use on our iPad. The representative would load the form basically with the date, the doctor's name. The doctor would then fill in his or her question as it was specifically stated to us. They sign it with their signature. We send it in electronically. And at that point, our Janssen specialists are cut out of the loop. So we're not allowed to follow up. We're not allowed to ask the clinician, did that appropriately address your concern? And I should have stated up front, we would, upon the question, we would state up front that that's outside of our product label if we have a compliant process called medical information request, if you would like to receive additional information.
Okay, so then that goes to medical...
It goes to our medical affairs department. So at that point, depending on what the doctor checked on the form, he or she can check that they want to receive it by mail, by fax, by email, or they can receive a one-on-one visit with a medical affairs liaison, which is typically a PharmD, someone that has a doctorate in pharmacy.
Okay. When you go to promote Janssen products to a doctor, can you force the doctor to see you?
We cannot, sir. We have instances every day where physicians choose not to see us, and they choose not to see us for various reasons. Sometimes it's that they don't have time that day, they're rounding in the hospital, or they just choose not to interact with industry.
So let's take the other situation. When a doctor does choose to see you, why does a doctor make that decision in your experience?
Sir, in my 17 years of experience interacting with healthcare professionals, they choose to see us because the value that we bring. And they choose to see us because we bring important information, which again balances the risk of our products and the efficacy of our product. And I think, when you look across my team earlier, I stated my average tenure is 15 years. If my specialists were not bringing value if they were not seen credible in the eyes of the customers, customers wouldn't continue to see us. Customers see us because we bring information that can help them better treat patients and appropriate patients in their setting.
Now, you mentioned earlier that a typical sales call, probably lasts about 3 minutes. Is there a range?
Sure, there's a range. Sometimes they're very brief, or we walk in the front door and, Dr. Smith is not available that day. He or she has gone to the cath lab. There are times during the week that we may provide an in-service during lunch, and that interaction could potentially last, 20 to 30 minutes. So there's certainly a range.
All right. Now, we've heard a fair amount of information during the course of the case about sales representative call notes. You familiar with sales representative call notes?
I am.
And let me, well, as a starting point, why don't you tell the court what I don't think we've had somebody testify who really gave a comprehensive explanation of what a call note is.
Sure. So a call note is a brief notation or jotted note, typically written in abbreviation, and its purpose is really for that individual, that representative who is writing the call note, to jog their memory about their next call, a future call, or potentially a partner that's going to follow behind them, just to remind them of something that needs to be touched on or what the last conversation was.
And in the course of your career as a sales representative at Janssen, did you yourself, keep call notes in that 2002 to 2008 time period?
As I recall, sir, sometimes I did.
So you didn't make a note every time?
I did not.
All right. Did you record the visit every time?
I did.
Okay. So sometimes you'd record the visit, but you wouldn't actually write any kind of narrative about the visit.
Right.
Why not?
Well, I think sometimes, there was unremarkable information. There was not something that needed to jog my memory, and that was my choice.
So you used it to, for your own purposes, to remind you of what you might want to follow up with a doctor on? That's
correct. And my interpretation of call notes across the organization is they are for an individual or a partner. I think in general what I could say about call notes is they're inherently incomplete, and they tend to lack context. Like I said earlier, they're typically written in abbreviation and shorthand.
All right. I want to take a look at a sample of one of your call notes. It's a subset of the larger exhibit, Your Honor, that was introduced. Probably easiest just to, I don't know how we want to mark this, maybe call it a court exhibit for now, but note for the record that it is in evidence and it's part of the 30 boxes, whatever it was.
Sure.
If I may approach?
Yes. Mr. Brody, are those bait stamps so we know where those fall in the exhibit?
They're not. It's
Is each call note somehow identified though?
Not by Bates number. There's an access database. There's actually an electronic database, and I believe that what was offered by the state and admitted during the state's case was a printout of that database.
Okay.
But when we break, I can get an exhibit number and.
That's fine. As long as they're uniquely identified, I think that's what I'm worried about.
Thank you.
And it might be easier, Your Honor, if we can publish this just to follow along.
That's fine.
Ms. Conway, do we have that?
Mr. Flannery, as you're looking at those, maybe move that microphone so we can still hear you.
Yes, sir.
It's just harder for the court reporter to hear when you're not facing her.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Flannery, can you tell us what we're looking at?
It would appear that we're looking at a call from our Viewpoint database.
Okay, is this one of your call notes?
It would appear so.
And this reflects a 2006 call that you made to a doctor?
Correct.
Can you um, first of all, who is Rick McKinney?
To my knowledge, he's a physician in Norman, Oklahoma, as I recall.
Okay. Do you know what kind of doctor he is?
I don't.
All right. And I imagine this is 13 years ago. I imagine you probably don't remember what you might have discussed with Dr. McKinney on October 3rd, 2006.
I do not, sir.
Based on the call note, what can you tell us?
Based on the call note, it looks like we either discussed at this call or we're going to discuss on the subsequent call Levaquin 750 and Duragesic 12 micrograms.
And I assume you didn't just walk in and say verbatim to Dr. McKinney, Levaquin 750, Duragesic 12 microgram.
I don't believe I did that.
Okay, so why would you write something like this down in the call note?
I think, again, going back to my original comment that the call notes are typically written in abbreviation and meant for oneself. Perhaps I was going to see Dr. McKinney on the next call, and I needed a brief reminder to talk about Levaquin 750 and Duragesic.
All right. As a district manager, starting in 2008, did you use call notes in reviewing sales representative calls, or was that something that they maintained for themselves?
So as I stated earlier, it's really a tool meant for the individual themselves to help jog their memory. I had the ability to go in and look at call notes. I don't recall that being something that was particularly or of high use for me. As I stated, it was really designed to benefit the user, which was the representative.
Okay, and you indicated that for you, sometimes that meant you would just record the date of a visit to a doctor, and you might not have any notes for follow-up.
That's correct.
We've heard testimony in the case that at some point the company went to a system that had a drop-down field for call notes rather than this sort of free-form space. Do you recall that happening?
I don't recall the exact date, but I do recall us changing technological platforms.
And why did the company change technological platforms?
Sir, I wasn't involved in that decision-making process as to the reason why. I would say that the new platform helped drive efficiencies just in the way that representatives entered calls, as well as efficiencies at my level where if I wanted to run a report to make sure that we're accurately conveying both our risk and our safety message, it gave me the ability to do that in a much more efficient manner.
So it was valuable to you in your management role?
Yes, sir.
Let's talk a little bit about, and we can take that down, Ms. Conway. Sales representative compensation. How are Janssen's sales representatives compensated?
So our sales representatives are compensated. They have a base salary as well as a quarterly incentive plan. And
explain, if you will, the quarterly incentive plan for the court.
So the quarterly incentive plan is paid out on a quarterly basis. It's typically composed of sales metrics such as market share, TRX volume, DDD, or that's called institutional volume, like purchases within the hospital. So there's a host of components that go into the quarterly incentive compensation plan.
And then ultimately, what does that mean for an individual sales representative?
It means that he or she has the potential to be paid out on a quarterly basis.
Okay, and that a certain percentage of their compensation will be based on that incentive plan?
Right, so if you look at total compensation of our representatives and our specialists, use those interchangeably, on average, it's 10 to 20% of their total compensation is their incentive compensation.
Okay, and then you said that's based on various different performance metrics?
That's correct, sir.
Is the way that Janssen compensates its sales representatives the same across all of the therapeutic areas where the company has medications?
It is. The reason I know that, for about the past 3 years, excluding this year, I've served on our Incentive Compensation Advisory Board. So I do have visibility to some of our compensation plans across other therapeutic areas that I had stated earlier. And I can say that it is consistent across Janssen North America Farm.
Do you have any sort of window into the way other pharmaceutical companies compensate sales representatives?
Right.
Calls for speculation.
Your Honor, I asked him if he has a window into it. I'm laying the foundation.
No, he said, do you have any idea?
I said, do you have a window into how other companies compensate their sales representatives?
Unless he has personal knowledge and works there, there's no foundation. He's calling for speculation.
I'm laying the foundation.
I
Your Honor.
overruled the objection.
Thank you. Mr. Flannery, I'll re-ask the question. Do you have a window into the way that other pharmaceutical manufacturers compensate their sales representatives?
I do. Again, based on my role on our Incentive Compensation Advisory Board, we do receive information from benchmarking studies that's typically done by a third party that states that Janssen incentive compensation is in line and benchmarked accordingly with other organizations.
Okay. Do these incentive compensation plans affect the way that your sales representatives detail different products?
Sir, I do not believe that they do. And the reason I say that is regardless of the incentive compensation plan that's put out there, the behavior and the skill sets and interactions by our specialists and by our representatives are the same. Our goal is to go out and educate our risk and benefits of our products for appropriate patients, and if a physician and a patient in a shared decision decide that a Janssen product is appropriate for them, that prescription could be written. Likewise, sir, I'd go back to my comment earlier, just, are we incentivized by potentially making more money? And I would go back to the credibility of my individuals in my work group, and the fact that over our 15 years on average tenure in my group, sir, we don't build value by deceiving customers, and we don't have the ability to go in and see customers on a consistent basis by deceiving customers or giving them false or misleading information. Again, I'm proud of the work that my people do, and I'm proud of the work that Janssen does, and we've been able to maintain those relationships by conveying fair, balanced information.
So it sounds like that's another way of saying that maintaining your credibility with doctors is, at the end of the day, something that is going to lead to financial success.
It potentially could. Yes, sir.
And are Janssen's products important to that success?
They are. I think if you look at, doctors have a decision every day when they're in front of a patient, either at a healthcare facility, such as a clinic or a hospital. They have a decision, and they have many options to write products. We believe that we have good products at Janssen across our therapeutic areas. So yes, sir, physicians do have choices. We believe when used appropriately for the appropriate patient, Janssen products provide benefit.
Now, you have mentioned a number of times in your testimony this morning that one of the primary things that a sales representative tries to do is to educate doctors about Janssen's products. And just to be clear, if as a sales representative you do a good job educating doctors about Janssen's products, is the ultimate goal of that education to provide a doctor with the information that the doctor needs to seriously consider Janssen's products for that doctor's patients?
It is. I would say that's an accurate assessment. Again, when we convey fair, balanced information for an appropriate patient in appropriate disease state, we believe that if the physician chooses a Janssen product, they've made that decision, and they've made it with the best interests of the patient in mind.
Now, Mr. Flannery, you have been at Janssen in various roles in the sales function for 17 years now. Are you proud of the career you've had at the company today?
Sir, I'm extremely proud of the career that I've had at Janssen and Johnson & Johnson.
Why is that?
I look every day at the dedication. I can speak to my team and those that I interact with on a daily basis. My team is very dedicated, devoted to go out and accurately representing our products. And every day we go out trying to better healthcare of Oklahomans, of people within our region and across the United States. You know, sir, I think every day, you know, people take their health care for granted. And it's at some point that, you know, everyone falls to an illness, they fall to a condition, or they receive a diagnosis. And it's at that point where, you know, they hope and pray that a company like Janssen has been innovative and developed products that can help better their health care. And at Janssen, we hope that we're there to inspire health care for those people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Flannery.
Thank you.
Mr. Witten?
Did you want to take a break first, Judge, or you want to go?
Yeah, let's take a short break first. We'll start right back up at 10 o'clock.
proceed.
Yes, you may.
Thanks, Judge. Morning.
Morning, sir.
You're from Henrietta,
Henrietta, Oklahoma.
home of Troy Aikman.
Home of Troy.
I'm guessing he's a little older than you.
And slightly.
Yeah. I'm from Seminole, right down the road.
I know Seminole well.
Yeah?
Yep.
I knew Henrietta pretty well.
Yeah.
So, you've been with J&J how many years?
17, sir.
Okay. And you like your job?
I do.
That's how you feed your family?
It is, sir.
You plan on staying there a while?
If they'll let me.
I figure you're going to retire there. What do you think?
It would be a great opportunity and an honor.
Yeah. So would it be fair to say you're a company man?
It would be fair to say that I'm dedicated to the job and responsibilities that J&J has asked me to do.
Okay. Well, when did you first learn that you were going to testify as a witness in this lawsuit?
I think I first learned sometime after I was deposed several months ago.
Okay. And who told you that they'd made the decision for you to be a witness in the case?
Your Honor, this is intruding into attorney-client communications. He's a current citizen of Opioid, and it's also irrelevant.
I don't know if it's a lawyer or not. Let me ask you this way. I'll rephrase it.
Okay, I'll
Did-
sustain the objection. Go ahead.
Did someone other than a lawyer tell you that they had selected you to be a representative witness for Janssen and Johnson in this lawsuit?
And just to clarify, not here as corporate representative, so he is a current company.
Didn't say that he was.
Sir, I received a couple different phone calls. Honestly don't recall if it was from an attorney or a J&J employee that was a non-attorney.
Did they say why they had chosen you to represent the company here?
Your Honor, we're getting into attorney-client here.
I made it very clear. I wasn't asking about a lawyer. I was asking about a company.
He just indicated that he doesn't remember if it was a lawyer or an employee, and I can't allow him to answer.
I sustain the objection.
How many hours or days did you spend rehearsing your testimony for today?
Sir, I don't recall the exact number of hours.
I see. You've answered every question. I heard every single question Mr. Brody asked you. You knew the answer. But you don't know the answer to that one?
The exact number of hours?
Yeah, this is an unrehearsed question.
Sure, I would say in excess of 15.
Okay.
But I would have to go back to my calendar to pull the exact number for you.
Well, did you rehearse, have somebody ask you the questions, and then have somebody play my role, cross-examine you?
Your Honor, now we're getting into witness preparation for counsel, and I think we've got down the safe path.
I think it's a fair question. I'm not asking for the substance of any conversation. I'm asking if they did an action. If they actually role played.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, is getting into how counsel elected to prepare a witness to testify where there's an attorney-client relationship with that witness.
I sustain the objection.
Well, I'd like to ask you some questions about what you know and what you don't know. Again, these are unrehearsed questions. You understand?
Yes, sir.
All right. May I approach? I'm going to use the board.
Yes, you may.
I want to ask you what you know about this lawsuit, because you're here to testify in the lawsuit, right?
Correct.
Do you have a general understanding of what the lawsuit is about?
I think I do, but I don't know that I'm an expert in the lawsuit.
I'm not asking you. I know you're not an expert. Well, let's do this. I'm going to write down, is there an opioid epidemic in Oklahoma? And I'll apologize for my handwriting, but I'll represent, that is one of the issues in the case. Were you generally aware of that?
I'm generally aware that there's an opioid epidemic composed of abuse, misuse, and overuse, yes.
Did somebody coach you to say the words? Because those weren't in my question.
No,
I asked you about an opioid epidemic.
I was not coached. That's my testimony.
So, is there an opioid epidemic in Oklahoma?
I believe there is.
All right. How long?
I don't have the exact number of years, sir.
All right. Next question, I'm gonna write on the board. What caused the epidemic? Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to check. It's one, it's beyond the scope, and two, this is a fact witness, and it's a request for an opinion on the causation from fact witness, and it's barred under 701.
I haven't asked a question yet. I made a statement that I'm writing that on the board. I'm about to ask a question. May I proceed?
Sounded like a question. Go ahead.
It wasn't. Back to my initial statement, I was asking you what you knew about the lawsuit. Just trying to put it in context. Did you know that is an issue? Question number 2 is an issue in this lawsuit.
What is an issue?
Question number 2, what caused the epidemic? You've already told us exists. I'm asking if you knew that's an issue in the case.
I did not.
Fair enough. Do you know, as you sit here today, what caused the opioid epidemic, in your humble opinion?
Your Honor, I'm objecting to a request for opinion from the fact witness. It's kind of balanced on proof that
I think I should be given some latitude on cross-examination, Your Honor. He covered a whole host of things, including how great their marketing reps and supervisors are, and I will establish through my questions that relates to causation. So I'm simply asking him if he knows, and under Oklahoma law, lay witnesses can express an opinion if they have knowledge. He is an expert salesperson. He sold opioids.
Your Honor, that's well beyond the bounds of the way.
I sustain the objection.
Well, as an expert salesperson, you sold opioids. You trained people on how to sell opioids. Do you know what caused the opioid epidemic?
Your Honor, it's the same question.
No, it's not.
It's different words, it's the same question, and it's seeking lay opinion.
They put him up here, touted his qualifications. I should be able to question him on that.
Mr. Wood is perfectly able to question Mr. Flannery
I'm trying.
what sales representative is, about how sales representatives are trained, about how sales representatives are compensated, about his role as a district manager. All of those things are within the scope. This is not the scope of this question for question of lay opinion, not contemplating or allowed by rules.
I sustain the objection.
All right. The third issue in this case is how do we abate the epidemic? So my question is, were you aware that is an issue in this lawsuit?
I've seen news clips about it.
Were you aware that was an issue in this lawsuit?
No, I was not.
Fair enough. So I'm trying to figure out, I've heard objections from your lawyer about what I can't get into, so I'm going to ask this question. I believe these are 3 of the issues in the case. Am I correct, you are not here to provide testimony for this judge on issue number 1? Is there an opioid epidemic in the case?
Your Honor, it's clear what he's here to give testimony on.
I overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Progress. You are not here to talk about issue number 1 in this lawsuit. Is there an opioid epidemic in Oklahoma? Agreed?
I think I answered that question. Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Can we agree you are not here to talk about the second issue in this lawsuit? What caused the epidemic? Right?
Correct.
Thank you. The third issue in the lawsuit, you are not here to talk about how we solve, how we abate the epidemic. Right?
Correct, sir.
You're not here to talk about any of the issues in this lawsuit. Right? First time I've caught Steve speechless. Those are the issues in the lawsuit, and you're not here to talk about them. Are we agreed on that?
On those three issues, sir, I'm not an epidemiologist and I'm not an expert in the abatement plan. I think what I testified to was my role as a district sales manager for Janssen.
Yeah, but I didn't ask you that, in all fairness. And you were very cooperative with your lawyer. Very simple question. The three issues in the lawsuit, you're not really here to provide any testimony on those three issues. Fair enough? Didn't get an answer.
I overruled the objection.
You're not here, if you'll just please answer my question. I don't want to hear whether you're an epidemiologist. I didn't ask you that.
No, I'm not here to answer those questions.
Thank you, sir. So I will ask you again some questions just to find out what you know. Did you know that before 1996 there was not an opioid epidemic?
I did not, sir.
Pardon me?
I did not, sir.
All right. Well, did you know that after 1996 in Oklahoma there was an oversupply of opioids? Yes or no?
No.
Are you aware today, looking back, in the whole 17 years you've been there, about whether Oklahoma ended up having an oversupply of opioids?
As I stated, sir, when you asked if there was an opioid epidemic in Oklahoma, yes, I was aware of that.
This was a different question. I didn't use the word epidemic. This is a little different than rehearsed testimony. My question is, were you aware in the 17 years you've been there whether there was an oversupply of opioids in the state of Oklahoma?
No, I was not.
Thank you, sir. Now, sales employees like yourself, you exist to sell more of your product, correct?
We exist to educate our customers, and at the end of the day, on fair balance, according to the FDA package insert, sir, we believe we have good products, and should physicians choose those and write those prescriptions and write those products for their patients, then yes, we would benefit from that.
Sir, I'm going to ask my question again, because in all fairness, I think you gave me a little speech. Your purpose is to sell. That's why you're called salesmen.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And indeed, you are paid on the basis of sales, right?
As I stated in my previous testimony, it's a portion of our compensation.
Well, in fact, sales reps at Janssen have quotas, right?
In some compensation plans, not in all.
Well, do you know the sales reps for the last 20-odd years in Oklahoma for your company, did they have quotas on sale of opioids? Yes or no?
No.
And indeed, sir, did you know that whether the sales reps in Oklahoma with your company were paid more when they sold more?
I'm not aware of the compensation plan for those over the last 20 years.
Well, let's just talk during the period of time that you do know about. Isn't it true that you, when you sold opioids, were paid more when you sold more opioids?
And the division that I worked in, that's possible. I can't testify to other divisions that sold opioids. I'm unaware of their compensation plans.
It's possible. Well, a moment ago, I heard your lawyer ask you if you knew what the compensation plan for other companies was, and you said you did. Right?
Sir, I think I testified that it's consistent in terms of fair and balance across other companies. Specifics, I'm unaware of.
Sir, I even objected because I thought it called for you to speculate. Didn't you answer by saying you weren't speculating, that you knew what other companies were doing on their compensation package for their sales reps? You remember that?
I remember in general, but not specific details.
I see. You remember when he asked you, but you don't when I ask you.
I'm doing my best to help you, sir.
Yeah, I see. Well, isn't it true that Purdue, speaking of other companies, your company did it just like sales reps with Purdue and Teva and Cephalon. They had not only quotas, but the more opioids they sold, the more they got paid. Isn't that true?
Sir, I can't speak to the compensation plan or the financial incentives of companies outside of my division.
Well, I think I heard you say that these incentive plans, I think your lawyer asked you if it influenced you drug reps. So I want to ask you about this. If your payment didn't influence your selling, then why were the sales reps paid for volume sales? The more they sold, the more they got paid. Why?
Sir, I think I explained earlier that we believe we have good products, and we have products that have an FDA-approved package insert. And as we go out and interact with healthcare professionals and give fair, balanced information, should they choose, in consultation with the patient, an appropriate patient to write our product, we do receive compensation.
The more you sell, the more you get paid. Yes or no?
Yes, because
Thank
we
you.
believe we have good products.
I heard you say that. And also, during at least some of the time you were selling opioids, sir, you and people just like you at your company would get trips and gifts and cash based upon how many opioids you sold. Isn't that true, yes or no?
I don't have recollection of that.
You don't remember that, huh? Well, isn't it true that if you're not trying to sell more and more opioids, why would the compensation plan even refer to how much is being sold? Why?
Sir, I'm not the author of the compensation plan. I couldn't speak to the context and the full details of why an individual in Titusville made that decision.
Well, okay, you make a good point. I agree with you. You did not write the compensation plans for your company. Just like you did not write their marketing plans for opioids, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And they were written by someone back in the home office, right?
That's correct.
Somebody much higher up than you, right?
Likely.
And in your preparation for coming here and testifying to Judge Baldwin, were you asked to review the testimony of any of the witnesses who testified before you?
I was not.
Have you read or watched any of this trial?
Sir, I've seen pieces of the information as I've tuned into the nightly news and social media.
Well, let me be more specific, because I may want to ask you some questions about it. We were talking about who wrote things back in the home office. So have you watched the testimony of our marketing expert on behalf of the state of Oklahoma, Renzi Stone?
No, sir, I did not.
You did not watch it, you did not read it.
No.
Have you seen any of the marketing documents that were used during the testimony of Renzi Stone and presented to this judge?
Your Honor, if he hasn't seen Mr. Stone's testimony, there's no foundation to ask if he's seen any of the documents.
That is ridiculous. He could have seen the documents without seeing the testimony. How would I know if I didn't ask him?
Overrule the objection.
Have you seen any of the documents that were utilized on Renzi Stone
No, I have not.
during his testimony? Have you seen any of the marketing plans that were used to market opioids in this state by your company?
Sir, at the time, and as I stated, the times when I had opioids, perhaps I could have seen a marketing plan. Since then, have I? No.
Were you aware that $30 million was the annual budget to market the sale of opioids?
Sir, I'm not aware of that number. Again, having been in the state for 17 years as a specialist or manager, that number sounds like a national number, not something at the state level.
If you're not aware, you could just say no. I agree with you, actually. It is a national number, and it does not include the sales force. Did you know that?
I did not.
Well, let's put up, Your Honor, may I display the sales chart? It's been displayed several times throughout the trial.
Yes, you may.
Mike, can you put that up? May I approach?
Yes, you may.
Have you ever seen this before in preparing for your testimony?
I have not.
Well, you see down here we have the years, 94 through 2017. See that?
Yes, sir.
And here we have numbers on the left axis. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. And these numbers here correspond to a year. So for example, in 2006, it would have been 20,933 sales rep visits in Oklahoma. See that?
I do, sir.
And you can see the other years. I don't need to read them all. Pretty high numbers in certain years. Were you aware that these numbers of sales rep visits were made to doctors during those years?
I was not.
And did you have anything to do with the years 2001 and 2007? I'll just start there. Did you, as a supervisor or as an employee, did you have anything to do with supervising the sales reps who made those visits during those years?
I did not.
So you're not here to talk about those, are you?
Well, sir, I was not in my capacity currently
That's why you're not here to talk about it.
for those years.
Let's go forward from 2008 to say 2013. You see those numbers?
Yes, sir.
Did you have anything to do with those sales rep visits or supervising any of those sales reps during those years?
I did not derive the call plan that would have dictated the number of times. However, in a brief period, as explained earlier, when I had Nucenta during that time period, I would have supervised some sales representatives that would have made a portion or some of those calls.
Do you have any estimate? Well, first let me ask you, what year did you say that was?
I think, sir, that was roughly 2010, the
Okay.
2010 timeframe.
Okay, so you had something to do probably with sales reps during that 2010 period. Do you have any idea how many?
How many sales representatives?
Yeah, and how many visits they made to Oklahoma doctors trying to sell opioids?
Probably 5 specialists at that time.
How many visits, do you know?
I don't know.
Fair enough. Let's go back to our chart from 1994 to say 2001. Did you have anything to do with sales representatives making visits to Oklahoma doctors trying to sell opioids during either as a sales rep or as a supervisor during that period of time?
No, sir, I was not employed with Janssen.
Okay, let's go to the next chart. Let's see the CDC chart, Mike. Have you ever seen this before?
I have not.
This has been used by both sides, I'll tell you, in this lawsuit. Do you see again, we have years on the bottom.
Yes.
You understand that?
Mhm.
Okay, and we have rates with numbers on the left-hand side. Do you see that this green line represents sale of opioids?
I do.
What direction is it going?
Left to right.
How about on the up and down side? What direction is it going?
Up.
And this red color represents opioid deaths. Do you see it?
Yes, sir.
What direction is it going?
Similar.
And do you see the blue line is opioid treatment admissions? What direction is it going?
Similar.
Did you know they were not going that direction before 1996?
No, sir. Without not seeing it on the graph, no, I did not know that.
Let's go to the next one. We have an Oklahoma-fied version of this. Have you ever seen this before?
I have not.
Did you know the testimony in this case has been that prior to 1996, the sale of opioids was a flat line? Did you know that?
I did not.
Did you know that the yellow line here represents sales of opioids? You see that line?
I see the yellow line.
What line? What direction does it go?
It goes up and then starts to plateau.
It does. And did you know the peak of the epidemic in Oklahoma was around 2012-13?
I did not.
Did you know the sales of opioids then began to go down?
I see that.
And did you know that the deaths and the overdoses went down in corresponding fashion?
I see that on the chart.
Do you know why they went down?
Sir, I'm not, as I stated, I'm not familiar with the data.
I just asked.
No, I do not.
Thank you. And do you see that as the sales of opioids go up, so do the deaths?
I see the blue line, the blue graph, and the yellow line, yes.
And you understand, you can read, blue represents the death rate, and the yellow line represents sale of opioids.
Yes, I'm just unfamiliar with the data in general, but
Yeah.
I see the blue, yes.
So the more opioids we have in Oklahoma, the more deaths we have, according to this chart. right?
I see again, I see the bar graphs. It's difficult for me, not having ever seen the data or what data feeds into it. I'm aware that opioids are a complex issue, that there's a lot of factors that go into it.
Look, I'm just asking you about the chart.
I see the chart, yes,
All you
sir.
go by is this chart. As the opioid sales go up, the deaths go up, right? That chart shows it, right?
I see yes,
And when the opioids go down, sales, the deaths go down, right?
correct.
When did your company stop selling opioids?
I'm unaware of the specific date of divesting of opioids.
Did they stop selling opioids?
My understanding is we divested of Nucenta, I don't have the exact date, and stopped selling Duragesic, yes, sir.
When did your company get rid of most of the sales force relative to the sale of opioids?
Sir, I don't recall the specific date.
Did that happen?
At some point it did.
Why?
I think Janssen had made a decision to invest in other therapeutic areas.
I see. Well, you mentioned the credo of Janssen. You remember that when you first started out and how proud you were to represent your company?
I do.
And so let's talk about the credo of Janssen. Does that mean it's you need to be honest?
I think it's a component of it, sure.
Does that mean doing the right thing?
Yes, sir.
Does that mean if you do something wrong, you own up to what you did? Is that part of the credo?
I don't recall that specific verbiage in the credo.
Well, is that something you believe that your company should do? If they do something wrong, they should be honest and fess up to it.
Well, I would have to disagree with the premise, just in the sense that I haven't seen that in my experience at Janssen. I haven't been asked to do that.
Sir, you told us this morning, you went into great detail about your family, you have children. Look, we're both from Oklahoma. Isn't that what we teach our children from a very young age? You don't even have to know what it is. If you do something wrong, don't cover it up. Fess up to it. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I think we're in a hypothetical. I try to teach my children responsibility.
Would you answer my question? It's very simple. If you do something wrong, don't you teach your children, I should fess up to it, no matter how bad it hurts? Yes or no?
I try to teach my children responsibility and to make the right decisions.
And Janssen should do that too.
I think we do our best. And in my 17 years, I think I can demonstrate that Janssen has made good decisions in the market.
Look, you cooperated with your lawyer. Will you cooperate with me? I didn't ask for a speech. I simply said, if they did something wrong, shouldn't they just fess up to it?
Objection asked and answered, and move to strike the initial comments.
Object to responsiveness, Your Honor. He's given a
I
speech.
overrule the objection.
And you cooperated and answered every one of his questions. I'm asking simple questions. If you do something wrong, fess up to it no matter how bad it hurts. Yes or no?
Sir, I just disagree with the premise that Janssen did something wrong.
I didn't ask you yet if they did. I'm asking you a principle, the same principle you teach your children. You wouldn't say that to your children if they came up to you and said, Daddy, if I do something wrong, should I fess up? You wouldn't say, well, I object to the hypothetical, would you?
I don't know.
Come on. You tell your children, of course, kids, if you do something wrong, fess up to it, wouldn't you?
And again, I think we have done the right thing in the market.
I haven't got there yet. I'm trying to see if we agree on honesty. That's part of being honest, isn't it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. And if you do something that hurts someone else, you need to make it right. Correct? That's just part of being honest, right?
In what terms?
Anything. If your kids ask you, Daddy, I hurt somebody, should I make it right? You're not going to ask them, well, I object to the hypothetical. You're going to say, you bet, honey. If you do something wrong, make it right. Am I right about that?
I don't know, sir. It's a hypothetical.
It is. Now can you answer, please?
And repeat the question again?
Sure. If you hurt somebody, you make it right. That's what Oklahomans do, right?
And again, I'm objecting to and disagreeing with that Janssen has caused harm in the market.
All right. You're not going to answer, so I'm just going to move on and accept that you wouldn't do it. So let's do this. You talked about the credo of Janssen & Janssen, so I think you kind of opened the door a little bit. One of the drugs you sold was Invega. right?
We had a very small portion of it.
I'm just asking you if you sold it.
Yes,
Thank you. It's a antipsychotic drug, right?
that's my understanding.
And are you aware that in 2013, Johnson & Johnson paid the U.S.
I'm going to, yeah, this is something that's covered by a motion from the management.
Yes.
They've been recruiting elite offensively. I don't know if you can necessarily say that defensively, but it's been certainly more in the blue chip ratio on the defensive side of the football, and there's no question that they're recruiting better defensively than they were, say, from, I don't know, 2011 to about 2015 or so. There was that lull in recruiting, and that was really both sides of the football, but certainly defensively for Oklahoma. So having said that, now it's time to get results, right? You've had the change in the defensive coaching staff. You have recruited better, and these aren't all just, freshmen on campus anymore. These are guys that are second or third year guys within the program. So now that you have the new philosophy defensively, you have the new coaching staff on the defensive side of the football, let's see those results. Let's start to see them. All right, well, that kind of falls right in line with this other quote from 24/7 Sports national recruiting guru Bart Simmons.
And I think Lincoln Riley's done a great job in that regard. Offensively, they're recruiting as well as anybody in the country, and that's easy to see why. Defensively, I've liked the way they recruited the last couple years defensively. It hasn't shown up on the field, which makes me wonder if Alex Grinch can sort of make something out of this defense that others haven't, because I actually think there's talent there, really good players there. We'll find out, but regardless, you just got to feel really good right now if you're an Oklahoma fan about the sort of the state of the program beyond the field, but just in the way that the staff and the Lincoln Riley emphasizes, prioritizes recruiting and works at it. Because ultimately, that's all. And the best head coaches are the guys that work at it, care about it, and Lincoln Riley certainly does.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when you say that you like the way that they've recruited recently defensively, Josh, that also does include maybe one of the better defensive recruiting classes that they had in 2019. These are guys that haven't stepped on the field quite yet. They haven't stepped on the field at all. And now, all right, let's see. Does Buki take that next step? He was a five-star guy that was quite heavily criticized. What happens when Nico Benito gets an opportunity? Ronnie Perkins was a guy that became a difference maker, or at least was counted on as a freshman. Brian Asamoah, Delarian Turner-Yell, among others. Is Jalen Redmond ready to make that next step? Is he healthy enough to do it? So that Starlin Baldwin was injured. What kind of ends up happening with him? Does he become a guy that could potentially help him out? So yeah, that's just looking back at last year's class. So I don't know, Josh. I kind of found that to be interesting, because if you do look back over the last couple of seasons, it's not as if it's a bunch of two-star guys that are coming in. They've done a pretty nice job. They have, yeah. And again, it's better than what was happening around here for, just like you said, a good portion of the early 2010s. So now that you have had the success in recruiting, now that it's gotten better in that department, now you just have to go out there and tackle better and be better on that side of the football. We know that there's a increased emphasis on turnovers. We hear the speed D, and I love it. I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited for this coaching staff. I'm excited for these young players. But show me, baby. Show me on Saturday. All right, take a time out. It's 10:34. We're live from Cabot's Construction. If you missed it when Gary was on, they've got a great deal until we're out of here at 11 a.m. Call 405-573-3048. A 2-week rental on a 10-yard dumpster, rollaway dumpsters.
So when you talked about the credo and how proud you are to work for your company, you're not suggesting that company never does anything wrong, are you?
Sir, I think like a lot of companies,
Answer my question. Be as cooperative with me as you were with him.
Your Honor, the witness was starting to answer the question. We can't interrupt him because
It's a
like the rest of the answer.
judge. He's given a speech every time. That's an easy yes or no question.
Your Honor, is starting to answer the question.
I will overrule the objection. Go ahead, Mr. Whitten.
Isn't just look. I'm trying to be as polite as I can to you. We grew up not too far from each other. I know how Oklahoma people treat each other. But I saw how you treated him. Treat me the same way. This is an easy question. You are not saying that your company never does anything wrong, surely.
We're not perfect.
Okay. No one is.
Me or you
Oh.
neither. Yes, sir.
No one is. Certainly not me, not you, and not Janssen and Johnson & Johnson. We can agree on that, right? The reason I'm asking you, if they do something wrong, they need to fess up to it. Fair?
And by fess up,
Tell the truth.
and I think there's demonstrated examples of that.
Well, I didn't ask you if there was. I asked you a very simple question. The same kind of question if your kid asks you, hey, Daddy, if I lie, should I fess up to it? You're always going to say yes, right? Why can't you say
Yes.
yes to me?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about the package inserts. You brought package inserts up several times this morning, right?
That's correct.
Let's talk about it. If you wanted to make the package insert the be-all, end-all, why don't you and your company save $30 million a year in marketing, save all the money they spend on drug reps, and just send out the package insert to the doctors? Nothing else. Why not?
So the package insert is a component of what we do provide to physicians on every interaction.
I know that. That's not my question.
I
Why
was-
don't you do away with all the drug reps?
Your Honor, it was in the middle of a day. The witness wasn't finished.
Let's go ahead and have the witness complete his answer, and if you can object if it's not responsive.
I am objecting because it's not responsive, but go ahead.
Let him finish his answer.
Yes, sir.
So it is part of what we provide to physicians. In addition, we provide additional information that, again, is in compliance and in alignment with the FDA-approved package insert.
Did you think you heard me ask if the package insert was part of your package?
I'm not following.
I didn't ask you if the package insert was part of what a sales rep does. I want to make sure you understand my question. That wasn't my question.
Okay.
My question was totally different. Why doesn't your company save $30 million a year and however much they pay all you drug reps and just send out package inserts to the doctors? Do you
That's-
understand my question?
I understand your question. I'm going to do the best to understand it, which is I don't make that decision. That decision is made by our corporate headquarters.
Does that mean you don't know the answer to my question?
I do not know the answer to your question.
All right, that's a fair answer. Now, I want to get to something that's very near and dear to my heart. Do you agree with me? When you do something well, you should be proud of it.
In general, yes.
Yeah. And when you do something well and it works just like you planned it, you shouldn't hide that after the fact, should you?
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
I'm just asking you a general question. If you set out to do something well and it works, no reason to hide that, is there?
No, but I work with a lot of people who do things well and don't boast about it. So
Well, I didn't even ask you about boasting. I asked you about hiding it. So let's talk about the evidence in the case. The defendant in this case spent over $30 million a year marketing opioids. That didn't count their sales force. I showed you how many sales rep visits there were. Are you with me so far?
I am.
So, if your company does all that for the purpose of selling opioids, does it make sense that they should back up and say, wait a minute, none of that stuff caused more opioids to be sold?
Objection beyond the scope.
Goes to the,
Overruled.
all right, are you with me?
I
didn't
think
want
so.
that objection to throw you off.
Repeat it one more time.
Yeah. Company spent $30 million a year trying to market and sell opioids. That doesn't include all the sales reps. Are you with me so far?
I am.
it wouldn't make sense for that very same company to come into this courtroom and say, whoa, wait a minute, none of our stuff worked. We didn't sell any more opioids, even though we marketed it with so many dollars. That doesn't make sense, does it?
Your Honor,
I overrule.
Sir, I'm not an expert, as I stated earlier on your chart, in regards to epidemiology. I don't know that I would be able to answer that question.
I'm not asking an epidemiology question, but if you don't know, you don't know. But Johnson & Johnson and Janssen, they've made it very clear to you, they're proud of all their efforts to sell opioids. I mean, I know they sold other drugs, but I don't want to talk about them because they're not part of this lawsuit. In your 17 years there, isn't it clear, based on your experience, that they're proud of their efforts in marketing and selling more opioids? Yes or no?
I haven't heard that phrase from Janssen.
No one at Janssen has ever told you or said in your presence that they're proud of this $30 million annual effort to market more opioids.
I've never heard the figure $30 million.
Well, let's take the $30 million out of the question. No one, you're saying no one at the company ever told you they're proud of their efforts during the 17 years you've been there, about their efforts to sell opioids in the state of Oklahoma? Is that your testimony?
That is my testimony.
Okay. Well, now, I have your resume. I think you gave us a copy of that in your depot. You remember your resume?
Yes, sir.
And you won a bunch of awards for sales, right?
I have been fortunate to win some awards, yes, sir.
Yeah. They were all tied to sales, right?
Many of them were, some were not.
All right? Well, let's just talk about the ones that were. Some of your awards were given to you because you sold more product, right?
Yes.
And the job of the sales reps, you don't just walk in there and hand the doctor a package insert, do you? That would be a little silly if that's all they did.
In
Correct?
most instances, no.
Are you agreeing with me?
I am.
Thank you, sir. And the job of the sales rep was to do much more than just hand the doctor the package insert, correct?
It was to have a clinical conversation.
Well, you also were there, according to Johnson & Johnson's marketing plan, which we showed the court during Renzi Stone's testimony, to influence doctors, correct?
Sir, if I may, we were there to educate doctors and provide them again on the safety and the risk and the benefits of our product. And if in turn that influenced a decision that for the physician to write or choose not to write a Janssen product, that's ultimately a physician's decision between them and the patient.
Sir, did you hear my question?
I did. I was just trying to provide some additional context.
Yeah, well, I would like you to answer my questions, just like you did Mr. Brody's questions, okay? And the court has already seen these marketing plans. I'm asking you if you have seen marketing plans, or if you're aware of marketing plans by your company that said the job of the sales rep was to influence doctors. Yes or no?
I have not seen a specific plan on influencing doctors in a marketing plan.
Well, that's the whole idea, isn't it? Is to influence doctors and get them to buy more of your product. In this case, we're talking about opioids. Yes or no?
Yes, for appropriate patients in appropriate disease states.
Well, it's sort of a catch-22, isn't it? You know that phrase, catch-22.
I've heard it.
If sales reps cannot or do not influence doctors, there's really no need for them, is there?
Well, I think based on the feedback that we've received from physicians and the value we bring, I would disagree with your premise.
Well, are you saying, sir, there's been some testimony in this case. There's a reason I'm asking this. I've seen some documents, and the court has seen some documents. Does your company tell your sales reps to tell the doctors they are experts?
I'm not aware, in my personal experience, I'm not aware where we've gone in and told a doctor that we are an expert.
Well, have you seen any marketing documents that told the sales reps, you are experts?
I have not, sir.
You tell the doctor you're experts.
No.
You're not aware, and you're 17 years there, that these sales reps have been told, tell the doctors you're an expert.
I can't recall a document specifically that says we should call ourselves experts.
I see. Well, I see your lawyer brought up this exhibit, Jansen 1492. It's the educational document. You remember that?
I have it in front of me.
Yeah, you've got that in front of you. So let me ask you this. I know you were not here during the testimony of Kim Eshelman. Do you know Kim Eshelman?
Sir, I know the name. We had never met.
I know you weren't here. I'm just going to tell you something she testified to, then I'm going to ask you a question. Kim Eshelman testified that her company provided no training to sales reps regarding addiction, red flags, treatment, or diagnosis of opioid addiction. Would you agree with that statement or disagree with it?
Pardon me, sir. I'm not aware of training regarding the subjects that you listed.
So you have never personally been trained yourself, even though you sold opioids for a period of time. You've not been given any training by your company on addiction, opioid addiction, red flags, treatment, or diagnosis, right?
Not to my knowledge.
And you're not aware of any of the sales reps under your direction and control during your time you were a supervisor where that kind of training was provided, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
And did you, I believe Ms. Eshelman also testified there was no training about pill mills. Did you receive any training about pill mills?
Not to my knowledge.
Any of the people that worked under you get training about pill mills, how to spot them, how to avoid them, what to do, things of that nature?
Not to my knowledge.
In this same exhibit, 1492, I read it, and you've read it too, correct?
Not cover to cover, but yes, I'm familiar with it.
You're familiar with it. Well, I didn't see anything in there that says, do not lie to the doctors about the risks of addiction. Did you?
Sir, I haven't gone through as you can see, there's numerous modules. I haven't gone through every single module recently, so I wouldn't be able to answer that question.
Do you have any recollection of training materials from your company that said, do not lie to the doctors about risks of addiction of opioids? Yes or no?
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, sir. Very easily. Did you see any training in your career? Did you receive any? Did you hear about any? About do not lie to doctors about the risks of addiction of opioids? Yes or no?
Yes, it's likely that would have been part of our training from our healthcare compliance, where we would have presented addiction or addiction potential as part of a complete story around the risk and adverse events that an opioid carries.
I'd like to see that. Can you tell me how I could see it? Because I haven't seen that.
I don't have document.
We prepared for this trial, and I'm just telling you, I haven't seen it. You said I'd like to think there are. I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly what you said. Are you speculating, or are you sure that document exists?
I can't state specifically that the document exists. What I can tell you as part of our healthcare compliance training is that presenting the full picture, which addiction, if it's in the package insert and it's in the label as a risk, would have been presented as part of a balanced and fair balanced message between efficacy and risk.
I don't want you to rephrase my question, so let me be real
I'm not
clear.
trying.
I'm not asking about fair balance. I'm not asking about risk versus benefit. I didn't say anything close to that. I'm being very narrow. Training that specifically says just this one thing. Do not lie to doctors about the risks of opioid addiction. Yes or no?
Your Honor, that's been asked and answered twice now.
Don't believe so, not that way.
Overrule.
What's the answer?
Sir, there's thousands of training documents.
Okay.
For me to pick out that one sentence, I would not be able to do that for you.
You don't remember specifically.
I don't remember that exact statement that you asked.
Fair enough. I will move to my next question. Do you recall being trained, do not exaggerate to doctors the benefits of opioids? Yes or no?
I do not recall that exact statement.
Well, sir, you've said a lot of things here today in your testimony in answering Mr. Brody's questions, so let me ask this. Do you agree that downplaying the risk of addiction to opioids is both dangerous to the patient and reckless? Yes or no?
I've never been placed in that scenario. In my 17 years, we continually and consistently present the fair balanced information that contains risk. I do not recall that, sir.
I didn't ask that. So, look, just please, use your common sense. I'm sure you've never driven a car drunk and on the wrong side of the road. But if I ask you, would you agree that driving a car drunk and on the wrong side of the road would be dangerous? You would have no trouble answering that, would you?
I would not do that.
Thank you. I'm asking you the same thing. Do you agree that if a sales rep downplayed the risk of addiction of opioids, it would be both dangerous and reckless? Yes or no?
Sir, again, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but you're asking me a hypothetical
Yes, sir. That's allowed under our laws. So will you answer?
that I haven't been presented with.
I'm presenting it with you now, just like I did, would you drive drunk and on the wrong side of the road? You do know, because you are a person that your company paid to sell opioids to doctors, correct?
That's correct.
And so you know more than the average person about opioids, correct?
Possibly.
Well, there's no doubt about that. You better, or you shouldn't be selling.
Sure.
You shouldn't be telling doctors what they should buy if you don't know more about them. Agreed?
Agreed.
All right. Now, with all that context, I'm asking you a very simple question. And it ought to be just as easy to answer as driving drunk on the wrong side of the road. Question. Do you agree that downplaying the risk of addiction to opioids is both dangerous and reckless? Yes or no? Please, sir.
Yes, and it is not something I've observed in my history at Janssen.
Did you think I asked you that? Because I didn't.
He answered the question.
He did, and then he volunteered something that was non-responsive, and he's not playing by the rules, Your Honor.
He answered yes.
I sustain it.
And by the way, I'll tell you, we had a Dr. Fong yesterday that testified in this court that it was indeed dangerous to downplay the risks of opioid addiction. So it sounds like you agreed with him, right?
I didn't see his testimony, sir.
Okie dokie. Well, let me ask you a similar question. Do you agree that if a sales rep exaggerated the benefits of opioids, that could also be dangerous and reckless? Yes or no?
Yes, that could cause harm.
Thank you, sir. And regarding training, let's talk about training for a minute. When Mr. Brody asked you about your training, I took notes here. You tell me if I'm remembering right. I wrote down, you mentioned that you got training about not harming the patients. Do you remember saying that?
I don't remember that exact statement, but yes, as part of our communication of the fair balance message and side effects, yes.
Yeah, drug reps for your company were trained you cannot harm the patient, right?
We do our best, sir.
All right, let's turn that statement upside down. That means if you are poorly trained and you say the wrong thing to a doctor, you could harm the patient, right?
There's potential.
Thank you, sir. False and inaccurate information that a drug rep gives to the doctor can harm patients. Yes or no?
There's potential.
Thank you, sir. Now, you're still with Janssen, correct?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you today have sales reps out here marketing opioids to Oklahoma doctors?
Sir, I think I've already answered that question.
I don't think I asked that exact question. Why don't you have your sales reps out here today marketing opioids to Oklahoma doctors?
That's not I don't make decisions on sales force deployment and alignment.
Well, your company still sells Duralgesic, Tramadol, right?
Sir, I'm unaware of that.
You're not aware that's still on the website today?
As that we have a sales force that's out actively promoting those.
No, I didn't say that. I said the opposite. You're selling Duragesic and Tramadol today. I didn't mention you had a sales force.
I'm unaware of that.
Well, why aren't you out there educating doctors on products you're still selling, like Duragesic and Tramadol?
Your Honor, he just said he wasn't aware of it.
I overrule the objection.
I mean, you've testified how proud you are to work for the company, how well trained you are, and how these doctors really need. You specifically said, we bring value to the doctors. And yet, your company's still selling some opioids with no drug reps out there educating the doctors. So you can do this safely, sell the opioids that are needed without the sales rep out here educating the doctor. Because that's exactly what's happening today with your company, right?
Again, I said I was unaware of that.
I see. Well, now, let's talk about the Duragesic wind down. I believe you made reference to that. Duragesic wound down, but your company's still getting 90 cents on the dollar for the sale of generic fentanyl patches called Sandoz, right?
Sir, I'm unaware of that.
You don't have any knowledge of that?
No, sir. It's not in
Yeah.
my therapeutic area.
You haven't been told that?
No, sir.
Well, Mr. Brody has brought you here to the court, and you've represented about your great training and things of that nature. Here's what I'm wondering. Did you review, before you came here to talk to the judge today, all of the call notes that have been produced in this case going over all the sales of opioids in Oklahoma by this company?
I did not, sir.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
This is a picture used in this trial. I don't know, Mike, can you put that picture up? But I'll show you a picture version of it. These are boxes of the call notes. It's a lot of call notes. Look like a lot of call notes to you?
I see several boxes. Yes, sir.
Well, since you are the guy they've put up as a sales rep to show the court what kind of sales reps they have, did they ask you to look at those call notes as a supervisor to see if there's anything in there improper?
I did not, sir.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you about some of the things that you have told us here this morning. I was asking you questions about could it be dangerous to say the wrong thing to doctors. You remember those questions?
I do.
Minimizing the risks of addiction, of abuse, of diversion, those could be dangerous to patients. We already agreed on that, right?
I think I answered that question.
And we agreed on it, right?
I think we did.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, I'd like to put up State's Exhibit 1161. I think that's in evidence through Renzi Stone. May we display that?
Yes.
Mike, if you can put that up and go to the third bullet point, you might need to, third page, third bullet point. Yeah, I don't know if you can, yeah, thank you, Mike. Do you see that?
I do.
Can I approach?
Yes.
Hey, I think we agreed on something. This is from your company. Engage a multidisciplinary group of partners, stakeholders, focused on optimizing the benefits of prescription opioids for pain management, minimizing their risks, including abuse and diversion. That's what we just talked about, right?
That's what it says, sir.
And that's from your company. That is Nucenta's launch documents. Did you know that?
I did not.
You just agreed with me that could be dangerous to do that, right?
Objection, Your Honor, just stating.
Sustaining.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the fifth bullet point. You see that? Develop an understanding, influence, positions of advocacy partners and lead by influence, perspectives, issues. Were you taught to sell opioids that way?
I don't recall that.
The next one, clarify the facilitating factors and obstacles, taking proactive approaches to address appropriate prescription opioids, and deter discussions away from abuse and toward appropriate use. You see that?
I see that sentence.
That's one of the issues we've been discussing this morning that's wrong, correct?
Sir, I think it's a sentence that obviously in a large document would have been part of a broader conversation.
Let's go to S1728. Your Honor, I think that's already in.
You may publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Have you ever seen, by the way, any of these marketing documents that I've shown you thus far?
No, sir.
Do you remember someone teaching you how they wanted you to market these drugs?
Through these documents?
Yeah.
I do not, sir.
Let's go to the Oklahoma influence map on page 4. Can I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
This has been talked about through Renzi Stone. I'm sure the court will remember this. Everything was focused on selling more prescriptions, outflow, the writing of prescriptions. That is what marketing at your company is all about, isn't it?
Sir, I think it's been stated today that one of our goals is appropriate prescriptions for appropriate patients.
Well, it was about more than that. It was about making money, wasn't it?
I think it's been well established. Janssen and J&J is a for-profit company.
Yeah. Let's look at S1246, shall we? And I'm not going to go through all these in as great a detail as we did with Renzi Stone. I just want to hit some of the high points. Do you see here, this is, again, we're talking about Duragesic. You see that? Duragesic will exceed $500 million in 2001. That was the goal. You see that?
I see the words.
Yeah. It was all about growth, wasn't it?
Sir, I couldn't comment to this document. At this time, I wasn't an employee of Janssen or Johnson & Johnson and have no knowledge of it.
Let's put up, let me see if I can figure out what page this is on. Just 1 minute, Your Honor. Same page down at the bottom. I think it's that last paragraph, Mike, if you could highlight that. Do you see the last paragraph? Can you read that from where you're at, sir?
Yes, I can see it.
It says, physicians are becoming more comfortable using opioids in non-malignant pain. Let me just stop right there. Did you know that before you went to work for this company, opioids were pretty much just used in a conservative way for end-of-life care and short-term acute?
I was unaware of that.
Well, it goes on to say, our objective is to convince them that Duragesic is effective and safe. You see where I'm reading from?
Yes, sir.
So you guys were trying to convince the doctor, even though they were really the experts, right? Right?
Sir, again, I could state my original comment around this document. I wasn't an employee of Janssen at this time. I've never received this document. It would be difficult to me to provide context on a document that was relevant or irrelevant when I was not an employee.
Fair enough. We'll just ask the court to recall all these documents from Renzi Stone's testimony. Your Honor, that's all the questions I have. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Flannery, just a couple questions.
Sure.
Mr. Whitten asked you questions about training, and you talked about training on the risks and benefits of a drug, and you mentioned fair, balanced information. Do you recall that?
I do.
As a sales representative and as a district manager, what does that phrase, fair, balanced information, mean to you?
Fair balanced means having a conversation with a physician regarding the efficacy, which is the potential benefits that a patient could receive, in balance with the side effect and adverse event profile that the FDA has deemed appropriate for that patient.
And when you say the FDA is deemed appropriate, what do you mean?
That's in the FDA label, that based on phase 3 clinical trials that the FDA has accepted as part of the approval process, that those are the side effects that the FDA says should be placed in the package insert.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Flannery. Appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you.
Just one quick follow-up. I didn't see fair and balanced anywhere near where it said, let's get to the $500 million grant. Did you?
In which document,
The one
sir?
I showed you that said, let's get to $500 million, I didn't see the words fair and balanced. Did you?
Again, sir, before my employment.
I was talking about on the screen. Did you?
I didn't have a chance to read the entire document, but no, what you showed me, the highlighted section, I did not see it.
Thank you.
Mr. Flannery, thank you. You'll be excused.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.